Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Land Down Under book hangout. This month we did my pick, which was Fathomfolk by Eliza Chan. Alyssa, if you can hold the book up again, because you can show the cover. That's the ebook cover. The physical book is gorgeous, and nobody has it. So apparently we all did the audio. Thank you, Shane. Yeah, look at that. It's gorgeous. It's got some gold leafing on it and stuff if you've got the Dead Tree version. So yeah, that was the book. It was making it all around the book talks. I didn't find it on Book Talk. I just wanted to find something that was from an East Asian topic, because that's something I normally pick. It's like Central or South American. It's been what I've been kind of on a kick for. So I wanted something different, and that's why I chose it. Maybe we can go around, do kind of first impressions, and then we'll just jump on in. Let's see, Elizabeth, could you go first?
Yeah. I did not finish the book. I read about 184 pages and I just was not really engaging with it very much. I just found the world building interesting, but I found it difficult to engage with emotionally, and also I with the low energy that I had, I found some of the plot difficult, and I just decided not to push through that.
Fair. That's totally fair. But yeah, we are a book club. If you're allowed to break up with a book, it's all good. Kristen.
I did finish it. I did the audio, but like I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it a lot more towards the end than I did at the beginning. It took me quite a while to get into it. And I think I agree, Elizabeth, it took me a while. I didn't really emotionally connect with it, like you said. But I thought the world building was really interesting. And I thought the allegories for, refugees and immigrants and racism and all of that stuff was really interesting. But I found it hard to engage with the characters. And I'm not sure why. I can't pinpoint why, so we can probably talk about that a bit more later. But yeah, it was okay. But it wasn't like, it didn't blow me away or anything either. So kind of like in the middle.
So far, I'm feeling you. How about Alyssa?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, it's really interesting listening to this, because the same thing. I haven't finished it. I'm 72%, and it keeps being a little hard. I am liking the characters, especially Nami, and I'm liking Trish, the old lady. So there's like these connections there. But like the first week I worked really hard, and in 3 days I got like 35%. And in the next like 7 days, it's like just really hard to I don't know why, because it is an engaging story. It's just there's a lot going on, a lot of layers, and some people I just bloody hate. like fuck you, Serena. Just fuck you, Serena. So that's about it. I'll pass.
Shane.
So I didn't finish. No, I got about 40% of the way through, around 160 pages. And some of the characters I'm really liking and not getting enough screen time with them. And some people Nami, I find interesting and frustrating, and being in her viewpoint was like really like just drags. And I don't know why. The world is fascinating and delightful. Yeah, and so I can't exactly say, because it's interesting and an interesting story, and there's interesting stuff going on. But yeah, just some of it is like
yeah,
hard to read the next bit.
I had totally the same experience. I pushed myself to get this done because I had a friend coming from overseas. So I finished it last month. And it was a slog. It was such a slog until I got to about the 60, 65, 70% mark. And then it picked up significantly. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I'm getting some stuff, and I was connecting a bit more. And I have some thoughts on part of what this is, but this is I was going on and reading up today on Like I watched a couple of interviews with the author just to kind of get her perspective on why she was writing it, what her goal was with this book. This is her first novel. She's a short story writer up until this point. She's only done short stories. And I think it shows in kind of what she was doing, because I felt like there were points in this book where it could have finished. And I was looking at it, I was like, oh my God, I have half a book left. What?
Yeah.
So yeah. And I mean, and if it had finished, I probably wouldn't have bothered. Like if she turned it first and second book, right? I wouldn't have picked up the second book. I'm happy I finished it because it did resolve and it had an interesting resolution, which I was pretty happy with. But that's an awful lot of an ask for someone to get 70% of the way through the book before you even start to emotionally connect with these characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only thing that kept me going was kind of the world building, and I was like, it's my book. And we ditched my last book because my last book, I think it's my last book. There was one book we've ditched of mine recently because I picked it up and it was so heavy and dark that I was like, sorry guys. So yeah, so I felt a bit responsible to make sure I actually finished the book this time. But yeah, so if you're willing to get to that 70% mark, you'll get a payoff. I don't know if it's going to be enough to make you want to read the second book because apparently it's a duology.
Yeah, that's
but at least it does resolve itself. I
would agree that yes, it does pick up towards the end, but I'm not picking up the next.
Sorry, Eliza. I'm not going to read the second book. The world building was awesome. That was I really enjoyed that a lot. I liked what she was trying to say. Apparently her goal was to pose questions. She didn't want to make super strong parallels because she didn't want people to then turn to her and go, well, how do you fix it? Because she didn't have answers. She just had lots of questions she was trying to kind of parse out. So that was, I guess, her goal with the book.
Can I just jump in here? I'm thinking about my experience of reading Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie, which is a brilliant book, but it took me half the book to get into it. It was a really slow start. I struggled to connect to the characters. World building was interesting, but once you hit that halfway point, it really took off and sucked me in. So it's interesting to kind of think about what that experience was like and in comparison to this as well.
I think with Ancillary Justice, a lot of it for me was I was like, what is going on at the beginning? Whereas with this, it was less that. I could kind of get what was going on and it was more that I wasn't caring enough about what was going on. So... But yeah, I definitely agree that that book was very similar and that it was like, wow, this took a long time to grab me.
Yeah, I totally agree, Kirsten. I feel like she's trying to do too much because she's got 3 points of view. And to be fair, two of the three I didn't want to spend time with. And one of them, mainly for me, was Nami. I found Nami very frustrating. There were when Nami has her interactions with Mira and Kai, I liked her then. I thought that was sweet, but she frustrated me so much because I felt like she was too dumb. She should have been so much smarter than she was. She had such potential, and she didn't grow, and that did not pay off at the end either.
I have issues with the ending,
for the obvious bad guy, and that bothers me a lot. She's not even acknowledging that there's problems. She's just totally there for it, and I'm like,
yeah, the ending pissed me off.
Yeah.
That the rest of the ending I really liked. The part of are we fine with spoilers? I hear that I think Bobby and I are the only ones that got to the end. That she ends up with Firth at the end and I'm like, why? He's a dick. And
there's a thing that happens that he's so obviously, and she's even warned, and she's still like, oh, I can't help myself. And I'm like, no. You've shown enough moral fiber here. You should be better than this. Just a little bit. There should have been a little bit of growth here, and there isn't.
That's interesting.
Questioning herself. That frustrates me.
Because I'm at that part where I still want her to be with Firth, but I'm not sure about him, and I don't know whether he's just a treasonous. So it's interesting. I'm gathering that he's kind of both.
He gives us some pretty clear reasons to not. But
he's so sexy. How can she avoid it?
I can appreciate the eye candy and being like, yeah, I'll boink that, but this is not even this. She is so taken with him. And, there's no
she's
clear.
Completely inexperienced, though. You just get the sense that she's never
Yeah.
had a real deep attraction.
Yeah, I
And
mean, yeah,
yeah,
she is, but I think
young.
yeah, she is young. But I get frustrated. The amount of screen time we got with her, and the how little she grew as a character bothered me.
Mm.
And this is something that
Okay.
always bugs me. This is the thing I harp on in book club books is whenever we have a young character who has very little personal growth and we get a lot of time with them, I get frustrated. So,
Yeah.
That annoys the crap out of me too. And I like and then I contrast it with the things that I love. Like some of the characters in books that I love the most are ones where the authors managed to take a character that I didn't like at the beginning of the book and make me like them at the end because they're grown, you know. And so like there's potential for that to happen here because I didn't like her at the beginning, but I didn't really like her at the end either. And yet some of the things that she did, I could understand where she was coming from, but then other times I was just wanting to bang my head against the wall.
yeah, like I mean, I can appreciate she had a little bit of growth with the issue with the engine where she did acknowledge that she played a role in people dying with that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so we got that. Why couldn't she take that and expand it? She just has a whole blind spot for the hottie, and that's not. I'm like, female authors should be a bit better with writing her female characters.
To be fair, like some people just have terrible judgment when it comes to guys. Like I definitely know people like that.
Yeah, I think the thing that happens, and I really don't want to spoiler this one particular thing for Alyssa if she's going to finish it. The thing that happens with him, and Nami gets warned. This should have been a total slap in the face. There's really no way that you could, in that particular case. I do agree with you. Yes, some people have really bad judgment. I agree, but I don't buy it in this one.
And isn't growth like the basic defining definition of whether a book is worthy? Like, isn't that the whole like if there's not growth, the book didn't reach its mark?
Depends on the kind of book that it is, really.
Yeah.
It's definitely a thing that I enjoy in books is when there is character growth and when especially when the plot of the book actually it makes sense that the way they grow, you know what I mean? Like when it's earned growth, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, this should have been earned growth. Like she goes through a bunch of shit. You would think that she would grow from it.
I'm really appreciating hearing the description of where it lands, and I think finding out that she's still into Firth at the end probably makes me not want to finish the book. Where I'm at is Nami and Firth are having a conversation just after they've been at the rabble-rousing meeting and they've beaten up that poor guy, and Nami's horrified, and Firth is, well, of course it was all a trick. I can't believe you didn't trust us. And that's so abuser coded. That's so gaslighty. And I'm like, no, thank you. Yuck, horrible, get lost.
Yeah, that was one of the first hints that made me think maybe he's. And the second one is a little later on where he doesn't answer her in terms of the, she's asked to kill these people, basically to disconnect them. And he's nowhere to be found. And that was the other. So okay. So there might be more, which is fine. I don't mind spoilers.
Yeah, there's more. Yeah, there are a few other things. And she acknowledges that he never answered that question.
Yeah.
She does. In her, like, internally, she goes, he never answered me when I asked him what the plan was. He just kind of, he just sort of got me horny and then walked away, basically.
And he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
I like her decisions in that case where she actually goes to send Dan and figures out a way to also save as many people as she can.
Yeah.
By cutting the cords and all. And that was, I liked her there.
I think that is one thing I did appreciate about this book. So you're dealing with a really sticky situation of it's a rotting city, right? Like it's a rotting system, and your people want it to change, but it's how, like, you've got the complexity of there's a lot of sustained generational trauma from what happened historically that's never been addressed, or people didn't feel like it was addressed appropriately or sufficiently. and they want to move forward, but they both are stuck with that. But also nobody has a consensus of how to move forward, and so you've got this fracturing of all these different. And I'm like, I understand why she chose 3 points of view. She was trying to give you 3 different ways of approaching to make change happen, none of which manage to do it in the end, and that's fine because it's a hard problem. It's simple, like a one thing to do, but so I appreciate that she did a really good job of showing everyone was kind of, even like everyone was shades of gray. So even the sea witch, who's a big villain character, that's Serena, like she's a big villain character. She's still very much motivated by, she's trying to look after her kids, she's trying to look after her family. She's also a bit based on her nature a little bit, but she's trying to keep certain people safe, and she's trying to look out for the future in that way. So I did appreciate that about the book. It was just trying to do a lot.
It's interesting. I saw that the Fathom people tethered to the electric generation as it's interesting, although they're paid, it was definitely slavery. It was like slavery in the American South was like all the energy was provided by this group of people. And it's not a very far metaphor to be like the literal energy.
Even if you're looking at the agricultural circuit now in the States, where you've got people who come up and because they're providing all of that basically free labor, they're being paid.
That's the same here.
Yeah.
In Australia, basically all of the fruit picking and the harvesting of stuff and all that is done by like backpackers and people who are getting paid really, really low wages, but they can only stay in Australia on a work visa if they do a certain number of placements out in those farms and stuff, and they're from all accounts treated really, really badly. And it's definitely an issue in a lot of places. And I think that parallel of the using immigrant people for all of those jobs, like that's nothing new,
it's interesting
through all history, that's nothing new,
because I see so many, I don't know, good alternatives to that. It's weird. It's like I had a friend who like when we hit 18, 19, he went up to Alaska and worked on fishing boats, which was just this long slog, 12-hour days, and you walk out with a packet of money, but so it's like, what? Instead of using immigrant labor and all, we could use our 17 to 19-year-olds, and like everybody does a stint and then they're done. And that's their payment, paying forward into the society. And, then you don't have to have a permanent underclass. Sorry, that's nothing to do with the book though. But like every Fathomfolk take a year.
It's an interesting thing to talk about because it's like you were saying, Bobby, about there's not really one easy answer.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things I thought was really interesting was this thing of, well, do you go the route that, is it Kai? What was that? The dragon guy? What was that his name?
Yeah, he's the ambassador,
Like his route was like, do the political thing and try to, change the laws and blah, blah, blah. And then you've got Nami going, well, that's not working and it's not working fast enough. And so we need to, rebel and we need to be protesting and doing all of these other things. And it's like, neither of those things really work. But then you couldn't say that neither of them are useless either.
Yeah.
And then her way of working was actually countering what he was doing, because then like it was changing the popular vote away from them because they were like, well, now see, they're acting like we said they would. And it's I thought that whole thing was really interesting and really well done. But yeah,
it's a hard problem. Usually, I mean, like, my bias is I have worked for Amnesty International in the past as a group organizer and a grassroots developer. So I do have a slight bias towards like peaceful agitation, but agitation. However, the thing that Amnesty takes, they approach it with 3 prongs. You've got your independent observation and publications, you've got your grassroots agitation, and then you also have your working with diplomats. And you have to be really careful about how you approach all 3, because all three serve a purpose, but you want to try and coordinate them all together, because that way you have the strongest, tend to have the strongest and the most likelihood of having like a consistent path forward that doesn't kind of stall all the time and is
Yeah.
constantly being shifted. And that's really freaking hard to do.
Yeah.
Like,
Just-
yeah.
that's a lot of moving parts, and that's a lot of people you have to like get on board. That's
Yeah.
hard to do. Like,
And it's interesting because people interpret, I think people interpret, or at least I used to interpret the by any means necessary as being the most revolutionary, but it actually means by all means necessary. It means doing the vote, doing the diplomacy, doing the politics and the day-to-day lawmaking, as well as having people out in the field, at the protests, chaining themselves to trees if need be.
yeah.
The scene in the train, I don't know if you guys got to that yet, with
I did.
Mira and then them trying to arrest her.
Yeah.
That was really confronting, and obviously like brought up a lot of parallels with police in particular in America, and the way that African Americans are treated by police. And I was like, man, that was really, really hard to read. I was listening, but that particular part, I was like, wow, you could so see it happening, you could so see it happening. And yeah.
I mean, like, there are accounts of that happening, even in, like, not to downplay what's been happening very recently in the States with that specifically, but like, yeah, you've got accounts of like that happening in South Africa. You've got accounts of that. New South Wales police have pulled that. It's been in the news. Like, since I've lived here in the last 12 years, that's happened too. So yeah, it's that we're like, yeah, police aren't, as much as they're meant to be seen as this like not corrupt and very like lawful good or whatever. Yeah, they're human. They have flaws, and yeah.
And the people who are attracted to joining the police force tend to be more authoritarian bent rather than the service bent.
Yeah, that reminded me a lot of when I was doing my law degree, when I was doing my human rights law degree. One of the program wanted you to take one lecture class outside of your department. So I chose to do one with the development department, so like the world development department. And I thought it was fascinating because I mean, I'm not generally someone who just subscribes to we change the law and it's all good. I'm not like but especially not having done a lot of that like grassroots development work. I know that it takes from different directions to make good change happen. But I did find it fascinating how, coming from that, and I had worked in that industry for about 5 years, and then doing this law degree where everyone in the law department was like, we look at the law, we change the law, we make sure the law is doing what it should be doing, and therefore it can trickle down. And then you get into this development class where everyone's like, no, law has no place because it's too slow and no one ever listens to it and you have to be able to enforce it anyway. Yeah, I was like, oh, no wonder things don't ever get done. Like, because this is people doing their master's degrees and they're already thinking in this very, very narrow, very rigid, like, no, I have to do it all because I can't work with these other industries. It's fascinating.
I'm trying to remember what the topic was, talking about protesting and social change generally. But I saw really good probably it was around Trump's election and activism there. A few different places were like, if somebody else is working like not focused on your issue, great, excellent, good. Let them organize that, show up to their rallies, sign their petitions, and do your own thing. And I'm reminded a bit uncomfortably of, apparently it was a big thing for Ronald Reagan that you should never criticize another conservative. And for a while, conservatives on TV in the US were really good at turning any question about infighting on liberals or progressives, or they're the problem. Like, I'm not going to say whether I agree with people who are trying to change the laws my way or are out in the streets my way or any of that. I'm going to focus So yeah, it would be interesting to ask your classes or to get a like changing the law might not be fast enough for you, but you don't have to have a problem with people who are working on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's whenever you start looking at development, because those are the people on the ground, they're hit in the face on a day-to-day basis of the realities of the law not working.
Mm.
So I can understand why they're jaded. It's just unfortunate
Yeah.
but I'm like they're they're 20 somethings and they were already so jaded that they were just like, nope, I won't even give it the time of day to even work alongside. And
I think this book, as bringing it back to the book, the author gives a good impression of where those things do feel incompatible, where letting Kai advance his bill interferes with revolutionary change, and pushing revolutionary change interferes with your sort of cooperative bill. Yeah.
Or even back to that scene that Kirsten was talking about in the tram. Yeah, where
tram.
It was Mira, and Mira is the captain of the whatever they're called anyhow.
Border guard.
The border guard. Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I'm really bad with names, and these ones I wasn't even looking at what they were written. So but like she's quoting to him, she's like, no, these laws are still in place, because she knows them, because it's her job to know them. And the policeman's like, don't question, just do what I'm telling you to do right now, because he has decided that he's de-escalating something that we probably don't agree actually it needs to be de-escalated, but he's decided that he's de-escalating something. So he has decided, well, I can throw the law out because I've decided like it's an emergency, whereas she's like, it's not an emergency and this law still applies. You need to, and
she opens her coat to show her badge, and whatever he thinks he sees, he sees a weapon because
roll in her pocket, I think, that he said he thought was a weapon, and she's like, are we not allowed to read now or something? But
that's just another example of like that butting up against like people living day to day and having to deal with their own anxieties and prejudices and whatever else they're bringing into their job, versus these frameworks that are supposed to be there that you can rely on, that we don't always, for whatever reason.
I wouldn't mind talking about the ending.
Yeah, okay. About the ending,
if people are okay with that.
Are you okay with that? Yeah, okay.
So I'm not going to give away more than I have to, but there's a part in the end where basically a thing happens and now everybody has gills.
Yeah.
I didn't
has guilt.
Yeah, gills. So everyone basically,
so all of the humans got gills like Fathomfolk have.
Yeah.
I didn't like that because I felt like it was like, now is everything supposed to be magically fixed, so all the humans going to suddenly be like, well, now we can't tell each other apart, so we're all going to be in harmony, and like, really? And is it about like we all just should be the same and then that will solve everything?
I mean, to be fair, when I was reading it, I didn't get that impression. I do see where you're going, because when I first heard it happening, I'm like, oh, we're copping out. Come on.
Yeah.
I don't remember which of the three. I don't. It was either Mira or Nami. I don't remember which one it was, but they're observing what's happened. I think it was Nami, because she kind of caused this domino effect to make it where everyone ended up part Fathomfolk. Basically, everyone ends up half and half. So, and she's thinking, oh, well, I was trying to do what Kai wanted me to do, would have wanted, and I don't think I worded it properly. So now everyone's this. And she's like, oh God, because she's watching the humans react. And some of them like the border guards, they're like, hey, we grew gills, because they've worked with Mira. They understand, they've learned from her, they respect her, so they don't see it as a problem. They see it as they can see the positives. Whereas then you have these people on the trams who are freaking out and they're terrified and they're like checking over their children and having a big panic. And she was internally kind of thinking, this is changing everything. But I didn't get the impression she thought it was going to be necessarily for just the good. Like, I think she thought it was going to make things more complicated. Because now it's going to, like, everyone's going to think, oh God, Fathomfolk are even more terrifying because now they can, without my consent, change my biology. That was how I read it.
And given that there's an entire another book to come, I don't think
it's going to be a solution. No.
Yeah.
But I did kind of get this like impression, like it was like, oh well, now we're all the same. It's like, is that where we want to be going?
It did.
That's the solution to everything.
Yeah, I mean, she could go the route of like District 9, where we have to follow someone who has been, because we have lost a character, at least one. So maybe she brings in a different point of view, and we see it from someone who was originally human and is now part Fathomfolk. I don't know.
One thing I found interesting about the book is it's clear that there's a inherent hierarchy among the Fathomfolk in terms of their abilities and stuff, but yet they live really cooperatively and collectively, and within their communities, they're not taking advantage of that. They're not being assholes about it too much.
Out in the deep, they are assholes about it. It gets mentioned. They are total assholes about it.
We have a little bit of Dan's story is like he's kind of on that lower end of stuff, and he has been a bit mistreated as a youth, but not terribly, and he still is smart enough to have gotten out of it. And
that's more of a comment on his character than his treatment, I think.
Also, there's, not spoiling it, Dan has a role to play later on towards the end. I think I'd be interested to know what you think once you get there, because it does make a change. Yeah, Nami gets hit in the face with it because she grew up out in the deep and didn't notice, because she was in a place of privilege, being a dragon, right? It's very, and she didn't notice until she came to Tiankawe that and had to live basically where everyone was stuck in the slums. So everyone sort of had to collaboratively try to work together as much as possible. And then she was doing something, I cannot remember. Kirsten, maybe you remember. She ended up back out, it kind of in the mid levels of the water, and she was noticing that there was that they organized themselves based off of water weaving capabilities. And
at the beginning, like the beginning of her story, before she even gets banished, you can see that playing out. It's not
they definitely favor people who can either shapeshift into something that looks more human, or or they're more powerful. I think I just happened to remember that she very specifically, she realizes, oh my God, I didn't even notice this before.
Right. Interesting.
And Dan helps her realize this as well, because she's thinking about like what she's seeing, and then she's like, oh, but Dan isn't treated like that in Tiankawe, even though things really suck for the Fathomfolk. He's not treated that way.
Right.
It is interesting, but
yeah.
I
mean, she does have the privilege of being sent away and not thrown in jail with Dan, and I don't even remember her name.
Her friends, rather than she gets banished because her brother is an ambassador and her mother is royal, but she's some sort of upper level.
She sort of has privilege on both sides as well. She has the privilege in that, I forget what the names of the places are, but then when she does get banished, then she's still got the brother in the ambassador position. So she's still, she's up in the fancy apartment, and she's not down in the slums with everybody else. But I guess she got kind of attacked when she first turned up, and she got, what's her face attacked her and stuff. She's she kind of got a little taste of what it's like for everybody else there, and
she spends a lot of time in the slums with Trish, because Mira. Trish is unwell, and Mira can't always be there. Trish is Mira's mom, so she can't always be in the slums with her. So, Nami ends up spending quite a lot of time with her, And
that
so
starts at about 50 or 60%. It's not even that early that she
Yeah.
meets with Trish. It starts,
yeah.
and they get separated at. No, it's interesting. Things just keep happening, and they're worse and worse and worse, and that's kind of where I'm at. I don't get the sense that it gets better before it resolves.
It was interesting how heavy and dark it was, given that it was like given the book cover and given kind of the world building itself, which was kind of fun and whimsical. And it totally, I think, like the author was describing it as, what if the Little Mermaid was a really pissed off immigrant, like which was, because that's what you get. Like, that is kind of Mira's story. She's a, she's a siren who's immigrated over, and she's really pissed off, and how does she handle it, sort of thing. But for that, I felt like the plot line was actually quite dark. It doesn't have a lot of high points, I guess. There's a couple of cute things that happen, like cute beats along the way, but it's not a particularly like fluff, like happy story.
No.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's okay. I tend to read heavy, dark, like gritty things.
Some highlights though to kind of balance it out. Don't you?
I mean, I remember in the very beginning we get a really lovely scene where Kai and his sister and his girlfriend are all out having dinner. Like, it's her first night in Tiankawe, and like you're seeing this through Mira's eyes, where her partner, who she's only ever known as this ambassador, who she loves for his approach to being an ambassador and stuff, but she gets to see him be the big brother and just be a bit goofy. And she sees this kid who, like, she doesn't know if she likes yet or not, but she sees her be a little sister, and she's kind of like, well, that's sweet. That's cute. Like, that was fun.
I really liked their relationship, actually, Kai and Mira. That was one of the things that I liked the most about that book. I really thought he was wonderful, and
he was very Harvey. Is it Harvey Dent before Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face?
Yeah,
he was very Harvey Dent. Very, 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 very lawful good, and
just really like understanding of her and knowing her and what she, she's talking about how other boyfriends or whatever that she's had would like yell back at her and argue with her, and he's like, no, I know she just needs to vent about this, and I'm just gonna give her the space, and then I'm just gonna, like, he's just so lovely, and I really like
very emotionally aware.
The really nice trick of knowing his own limitations, knowing things he doesn't understand and can't see, and not trying to pretend, or not like accepting that he doesn't get them, and doing his best with them. But there are just some folks, some things where I have to take Mira's judgment on it, because he was sweet. I also really liked Nami and Mira's relationship. I was for the few percent that I've seen it, because I was worried when they first had that sort of like, who's this new person that my brother's hanging out with? But they were then time skipped fairly quickly, but you got the impression that Mira and Nami were getting along pretty well, and anything that. And that was, I was worried that we weren't going to get that at first.
We get a very sisterly relationship out of them, I felt.
That's right. Especially as Nami started getting closer to Trish and helping.
I was just going to say that was the thing I really liked, and I was really relieved, because I thought after the thing with the boat and when Trish got, they got separated, I was worried that Mira was going to blame her, and it's like, well, it wasn't really her fault, because when she left her, there was nothing wrong. The riot and shit hadn't started. She went to go and help the people on the boats. And then by the time she got back, all the shit had hit the fan, and it wasn't her fault. And I was really worried that that would break their relationship. But like, I was glad that that didn't, I wonder whether it would have been different if Trish had have actually died from that. But
did we ever find out who caused the boating accident? Was it was that?
It was the drawbacks. We don't know specifically why, other than they were just trying to cause a bit of chaos and agitation.
That's what I figured.
The author does a good job of when it comes to these things, these little like bits of tension where they burst, right? And you have something like that. You never get someone from the drawbacks. They never explicitly cop to it, but it's very clear. Like, basically, we're putting everything up through Nami's eyes, but us being probably, I don't know if everyone reading this would pick it up, but I think maybe us being who we are and what we've all experienced in Cluey, most of the people I've spoken to, they're like, yeah, it's definitely the drawbacks, like, because that's the big group that's agitating.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just don't know. We don't necessarily know who is pulling the strings in the drawbacks. We have a couple of
Right.
ideas by the end of the book, but we don't know who's actually pulling the strings.
I have my ideas.
Oh, I got mine. But I don't. That's a very clear, a very end of the book spoiler. I don't want to spoil it, Todd.
Yeah. I definitely have thoughts about that. So
So I don't even know if I could name any specific passages, but there's something going on throughout about the way the author presents characters' motivations that I found didn't grab me and was at a remove. And so even things that I could find quite convincing if it was explained a slightly different way. One example, Nami arriving in the city we've already mentioned, and she goes wandering in the slums for a day or more rather than getting in contact with Kai. And her reasons for doing it just seemed really sort of out of thin air. And another one around the same part of the book, Kai and Mira are at a dinner party, and she goes downstairs and talks to Cordelia or Serena and gets threatened.
That part you'll find out if you keep reading.
I think she has made a deal with Serena about her mother's health. But just when she's leaving the party and she's like, oh, I should tell Kai, but he's in conversation, so I'm not going to. And if there'd been any effort to make it difficult for her to have done it rather than just a really, really foolish choice. And I felt like things like that I think it's just in how I'm expecting it versus how the author's describing it, because perfectly reasonable.
I really felt like at the beginning of the book, and I think this is part of why it wasn't until that 60 to 70% mark where things had fleshed out so much that I could be like, oh, no, actually I'm invested. I'm emotionally invested enough to finish the book now. I really felt that the main characters were very tropey. And I don't know if cardboardy is quite, well, not cardboard, but very stereotypical. Like, we had Mira, who was the lawful good. She was trying to change everything from the inside. She had completely eschewed all of her foreignness, to make so that she could kind of be assimilated and nobody would see her. She basically wanted to be not seen. She wanted people to be colorblind, like, to her effectively, versus then you have like the young, I'm going to go and I'm going to like start some shit because I'm angry, like, teenage kid. And then you've got the woman who's pulling all the strings in the back parlor, the political strings, and she's and her husband's a puppet. I was like, that's all really tropey. And it took 70% of the book before it stopped feeling that way. So, and I think that's maybe what you were seeing there too, Shane, where there's things like that if maybe the author had more chops with writing a novel, or just who knows, just more experience in general, or better editing. I don't know. Like, maybe she could come up with, I don't know. Let's ask the editor in the room. Is that something editors do?
I mean, it can be, yeah. I was curious if, as you were saying that, whether that kind of tropiness of the characters might actually be one of the reasons it was so popular on Book Talk.
Okay. I have no idea. I have no TikTok whatsoever, so I don't even know what types of things end up on Book Talk. I just that was just the running joke in book club that we were doing so many Book Talk books this year.
Yeah, and I don't have any experience there either, so I couldn't answer the question, but it'd be interesting to find out, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense that she was a short story, because at points she'd like create these conflicts that needn't happen. And Shane and I kept talking about these stupid things like Nami says something careless to Kai, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know how I can when am I going to get a
Oh,
chance to apologize?" And it's like, he's sitting right there. You just say, "Oh shit, I'm sorry." You don't wait for 3 pages until, it's just, there was a lot of that going on, and I think that made the beginning of the book a little harder. Like, you
if
grow up.
if I remember explicitly, like she immediately sees his reaction, realizes what she said, thinks better of it, waits for her chance to apologize, waits for the moment to apologize, and the book says, and the moment passed. The very next line, and they're still there, they're still talking, and
Like,
it was just.
no. But yeah, little things. But yeah, I think once she got into the groove. Now, did she not have an editor, or?
No, she had an
I think it
editor.
was edited
Oh,
fine.
okay.
I think it was intentional, and possibly, yeah, just.
Okay.
What genre does she write short stories in?
Fantasy.
Sci-fi?
She tends to
Fantasy,
do
sci-fi?
fantasy. Yeah, she does fantasy stuff. She's what else? She's done a little, like, she's done some dark fantasy. I haven't read any of her other stuff. I just happened to, when I was going through and I was trying to get a feel for who she was as an author. She's from Scotland as well. So
Oh.
I don't want. She has some form of Southeast Asian heritage, but I couldn't find clearly what it was, and I didn't get a chance to go read her specific bio before I came to book club. So I don't want to add the wrong label there. But but yeah, she grew up in Scotland. She has a beautiful Scottish accent.
Scottish-born Chinese diaspora.
There we go. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yep. So, and I guess she's dabbled in she really likes blending like your Southeast Asian myths in with more like Western, particularly Scottish Gaelic fairy tales and stuff. So that's what she's been playing with a lot. So I imagine some of her short stories would probably be very interesting to check on, just because I like fairy tale retellings, so that could be fun. But I haven't read anything else by her yet.
It makes sense that she had like Kappas and Kelpies in the same story, right?
And one of the areas was Glashtin Street or something in the
Yeah, Grafton Street. Yep.
So yeah, it's definitely some Scottish folklore there if you know it.
And yeah, the things I was reacting to felt like they could very much be different cultural expectations, or just nuances of the writing, or different genre expectations. In reading fantasy, I once read, bumped into a romance book with a fantasy setting, and I kept getting frustrated by the main characters who kept doing stupid stuff and getting captured. And it was like 2/3 of the way through the book before I realized the point is the conversations with the villain. So of course they keep doing that.
Hilariously, that is actually something a lot of people about the cover of the book, even though most people tend to agree it's very beautiful, but a lot of people pick it up by the cover and assume they're getting a romantasy, so a romancy fantasy book, and that's not at all what it is.
No.
Very not that at all. But yeah.
I just looked up Cap and Kelpie, neither of which I really knew, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I had heard of both of them before. Like, I knew that a Kelpie was like a Scottish thing, and a Kappa's, I think, Japanese. Am I
Yeah,
right
it
there?
looks like. Yeah, they're both water. A Kelpie appears on land as a horse. That's really interesting.
Yes. Yeah, and I think they do mention something about hooves or something in the book at some point.
Right.
I mean, frequently they're wet. Sometimes they have like waterweed in their manes. You never get on them.
They absolutely will drown you.
Yep.
And I appreciated that the book had very little interest in explaining the different varieties of the Fathomfolk. Like,
I did like that. She was just like, you're gonna figure it out as we go. and you'll figure you'll either you'll figure it out and you'll go look it up yourself, or it'll be important and I'll tell you when it's important.
Selena was very like Ursula from The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, she was.
Pretty much like stealing people's voices and the tentacles and stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, she's definitely that's what we're doing here.
I did like that she was a bit more complex than just like the I'm just gonna sit here and take people, like have unfair bargains and screw people over. She still screwed people over, don't get me wrong, for her own benefit, but she was being motivated by, her own probably, more complex reasons at least.
And I do appreciate a woman that's allowed to have ambition in
some ways. Yes, yeah. I do appreciate that too.
Frustrating if it's always villain coded, but
yeah,
cool that she gets to have actual motivations and nuances. And
well,
I was really impressed.
Sorry, I was just going to say you have Mira there to balance her out, because Mira also has ambition, just expressed differently and for a different thing.
Maybe?
Yeah.
I think that was what was missing actually from the other villains, was that nuance and that motivation. Like, you had the motivation of like our people are being oppressed, but you didn't get any real and I don't know whether that'll happen in the next book, but you didn't get any real backstory about their personal situations and why they were doing the things that they were doing.
100%. Yeah, the drawbacks are just kind of this like Mobius, whatever, like blob of you've got Firth and Lynette, who we know a little bit about, but we only ever see them through Nami's point of view. Really, we don't get anything else from them at all.
And that not even from her point of view, you don't get any, hey, here's the story I'm going to tell you about me as a kid that happened that made me this angry. Like I would have liked to have seen something like that. Like why? I think there was some hints dropped there about Lynette and Firth, but there wasn't any real. And I don't know whether that's coming in the next book, but I'm not planning on reading it. So, like, that's the thing. I enjoy a villain that is complex and that I can go, hey, you know what? I can totally see why in the brain of this person they're the hero, and you could you could see from the perspective of like what's happening with their people that they've definitely got a motivation, but I wanted to see a more personal connection to that, like some backstory of them.
Interesting what you're saying about wanting like with a villain that where you can at least understand and sympathize with their motivations. That was the thing with Serena. I appreciated that she had a complex motivation. I didn't feel like it was sympathetic enough. So I still kind of just saw her as this frustrating like woman who she's decided that her, for whatever reason, her only way of kind of being able to survive in the world is to pull puppet strings. Okay, fine. And I got that she was doing it because she was trying to find a better future for her kids, but she also talked she talked shit about her kids all the time. like her eldest one goes on to take over Mira's position, and she still talks about him in her head as though he's an idiot, and of course he couldn't do it unless she was still micromanaging him. And I'm like, hey, I've lost it now. Like I was with you up until we got to that point. Sorry, Alyssa, I might have cut you off there. What
no, I think I was just agreeing with Kirsten about Lynette. Although I understood Lynette being that angry because of how her people were treated. I just couldn't get behind Serena at all. Like I understood Lynette a little bit more. Like Serena, it's like, oh, okay, so you want your family.
Yeah. She's very, very focused on her kids. Yeah.
I guess that's it. It's like if you're gonna commit murder and mayhem for, a million of your people versus 5 of your people. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say something else. Oh, about Lynette. So there's a thing that happens later on, which is around this thing that we're trying not to spoil it for you, Alyssa, because it's a big plot point towards the very end about Firth and Lynette and the drawbacks. but there's a thing that's kind of revealed about Lynette. She goes to reveal something and she's thwarted for whatever reason. But whenever that got shared, because I was wondering, there were some hints dropped along the way about her, and she does sort of acknowledge this thing that they've been building. And I was like, oh, I would have liked for Lynette and Nami to have had a little bit more time together.
Mm.
Yeah,
before,
because the little bit of time they had was really disastrous.
yeah, it wasn't enough.
Murdering her friend.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like Lynette obviously pays attention to Nami and learns from Nami when Nami's teaching her how to use her skills better and stuff. So while also still obviously not liking Nami, like obviously has a chip on her shoulder about Nami. So
yeah,
fair enough, really.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, like at the end I was like, oh, I want to know how she ended up where she was. I would have liked that story. I don't think its place is in this book. This book is doing too much as it is, but I would have liked her backstory.
Yeah.
To figure out how she got there. Because of the role she seems to play in the book. Like her position that she seems to occupy within the book and within the drawbacks. And then what gets revealed. That would be nice to know. If that's a short story, maybe I would read that one.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And interestingly, the fact that Nami is so uncritical and so wide-eyed means that the people she interacts with come off flat in some ways.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah.
Like we can see that she's being played by them, but we can't see anything more about them.
Yeah. And she can't see that she's being played. It's like, oh.
Yeah, that's my frustration with her. I'm like, can you not see any of that? It's one thing if you're like, I know I'm being played and I don't want to have to care. Like that would frustrate me, but at least you're acknowledging and you're picking up on things by the end of the book. If she was like, yes, I can see that I'm being played. But and then justify it to yourself. Sure. But
frustrating. Like
it would be one thing also if Lynette and Firth had tension over how he was treating Nami. Like, good, keep that sea dragon cooperating. It's lucky that she likes you. But dude, you're being a jerk. Cut that shit out. Or something like that.
I think there's probably a reason there. Why?
Yeah.
Probably.
There's probably a reason there. Okay, with the end, Kirsten, do you think we can talk about without spoilering that big plot point? There's like this one new character device thing. It's not a character necessarily, but there's a world thing in there. Do you think we can talk about that without killing that plot point?
I'm happy to bow. I'm happy to bow out and let you guys have that conversation.
I just don't want to like.
It is kind of a big thing that, like, yeah, I've been trying to talk around it too because I'm like, yeah.
Okay, I will let you go on spoiler free, and I'll say adieu. It was an enjoyable book, despite its drawbacks, and it's really cool to talk with you guys about it. That was not intentional at all. Thank you. Nice to see you. See you next time.
See you next time. Bye. Okay, so the Titans.
Yeah.
Titans. I don't know how I feel about that.
Coming, right?
It felt like they introduced a Meg.
Sorry, let's just stop for a minute. Titan or chitin?
Titan.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So the island is not an island.
Yeah, the island is not an island. And yeah. And so we've now, I mean, there are always bigger fish in the sea, right? So that now we learned this at some point in the story.
By living on one of them.
Yes, by living on one of them. And the excuse me, I'm gonna drop an F-bomb here, the fucking drawbacks. Basically, you get a climate, like, or you get a bioterrorist act happen where they kill one and causes complete mayhem because they're so angry that they're like, we can't wait any longer and we're just going to biggest impact, and they kill a Titan. And then, the Titan, this is how you learn it exists. And
Yeah.
but apparently there's still a bigger fish somewhere because something was the Titan was calling out
It
for
was
help.
calling for help when it was dying, and so there's obviously something else coming.
Yeah, which is what's going to be in the next book. And yeah, interestingly, only the three characters seem to be thinking about this impending doom, and they're not telling anyone else, even though everyone's a Fathomfolk now. That I was like, that's a weird way to end that. So
yeah, obviously setting up for the next book.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the reason why where everybody now has gills, because it was like we had to give them gills because otherwise they would have all drowned.
Yeah, because the Titan dying stunk everything.
It's like a giant tsunami came and
Yep.
um,
Oh dear.
But yeah, I was mad. I was like, right, whatever sympathy you had, you've lost it. I don't care about you anymore because you killed it, and it was nice, and it was protecting everybody for no reason, and it
was just being there.
But like, didn't it say something like it made the choice to have like to look after all these people and stuff? Didn't it?
Yeah, maybe it did actually. I don't quite remember, but yeah, it might have done.
I remember being mad that they killed it, and
I was pissed. It was very gratuitous. I mean, it felt like it was very much. It's again that like very tropey. What would you expect from a very flat like terror like?
It's kind of like,
group, but like this very like this agitation group that's obviously very angry and they're not being listened to, so they're escalating. Yeah. And so this is what, and so of course we're just going to have them drop a nuke basically on the city. That's pretty much what they've done.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was about to say the same thing. That's the parallel of it. Like, let's do something that's going to kill everybody and not going to help anyone, but like,
it's interesting too.
To show them
the way that it plays with the environmental concerns that were set up quite early in the book, with like pollution of the city and that sort of thing, and then to kind of have this this act where you kill some big natural phenomenon basically. Yeah, interesting choice.
Yeah.
Folks, I think I'm going to head off as well. I need to go walk the dog a bit and do some cleaning. Thank you. Very good discussion. I'm more tempted to read the book now, so I'll see if I get back there.
Skip ahead to 70%, see if you like it, and then go back and force the rest, that middle bit, if you think you like it.
Or just skim through if you're good with that.
Yeah, that's what I do. Just skim read is fine.
I'll get it on audio at 80%. Oh, because Kirsten, I'm totally convinced that listening is reading in every important way that matters.
If it isn't, I'm not getting any reading done anymore at the moment. Unless you count fan fiction on my phone, which, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Translating ink shapes into sounds is not the fundamental part.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Have fun, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for recommending the book. Catch you next time.
Right.
Yeah, I'm convinced that Firth is the big bad.
Yeah, I was actually wondering, early on, I was like, I bet you he's the one running everything.
And even right at the end when when Lynette is like, you don't understand what he's like. And I'm like, listen to this woman, for fuck's sake. She knows.
He kills her. He kills her. And Lynette, before she dies, she's like, I was you once. Don't trust him. He's not what you. And then he snaps her neck, and she runs up with him at the end.
And
she's still
willing. A fucking red flag. It's not a flag. This girl shouldn't trust. I was you once. I was in your position, and now he just murdered me. Oh yeah, he's fine. It's okay because he's really hot.
Yeah, that's a bridge too far for sure.
I mean, without being able to, without spoiling it for everyone else, like it's like that's why we're like, no, there is really no coming back from that.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, 100% agree on that. Like, if you murder someone that you both know right in front of you and who used to, date him and everything, big red flags right there.
And at that point, when it's not like by then Lynette and Nami weren't really at odds. They were not warm, but they
No.
were neutral with each other. Like there wasn't really any tension. And Nami had noticed that Lynette listened to Nami even when Lynette was frustrated and obviously didn't like Nami. So I felt like Lynette should have had enough rapport with Nami for Nami to have taken on board what she said right before she literally had her throat crushed.
Yeah, absolutely. That should be like a really horrifying thing that you'll never forget.
Yeah.
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 It's like, I don't get it.
Washed right over her. I don't understand.
Yeah.
So
Was
But
there
yeah.
anything else you guys wanted to unpack before we wrap up?
Don't think so.
I think I'm good. That wasn't a bad discussion. Like I was a bit like whenever everyone was saying, "Oh, I didn't finish it," which was fine. It's like I had to push to finish, but like when everyone was saying that, I was thinking, "Oh, we're not going to have a long discussion." We did pretty well.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
didn't get stuck at home with COVID. I probably wouldn't have finished either, but I had nothing else to do.
Oh, good. Okay, Mel, can we turn off the recording? Hold on. We should wrap up and actually say goodbye. Next month is Fourth Wing. So thank you for everyone who actually like listened to us read all the way to the end. Yeah, next month we're reading Fourth Wing by I'm sorry. It's another book talk book. Go find book
I'm
talk.
sure everybody's heard of it by now.
It's
sure
by
they all know what
Rebecca
we're talking about.
Yarros.
Thank you. It's got a lovely cover as well.
Night, everybody.
Bye.